Hey everybody, thank you for being here. This is Tim Hinton at Marching Arts Education. Thanks for watching. So excited to have these two gentlemen here. Trey Harris, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you, Tim?
I'm wonderful. And Greg Basham, how are you?
I'm doing incredible. I am just having a fantastic night myself.
That's awesome. So I'm going to ask you a little bit more about each of you, but I do want to say we're talking about band culture. And here's one of the things that's really interesting, building a band culture, actually building a culture of any organization. I do these webinars all the time and podcasts, and I can't tell you how many times in the middle of a conversation about whatever we're talking about, somebody says something about the building the culture, and it's in the culture, it's how we do things here. And because if you ask any great band director or staff member, how is it? I just talked to Broken Arrow last weekend. And I'm like, how do you do it? And they mentioned their band culture. They mentioned that it's in the way, this is how we practice. This is how we put our horns up. Like they have it, they have a way of doing things, a way of being. So this is really, really important. And even if I'm talking to indoor drumline guys or color guard people or whatever, this comes up. So I think it's really, really important. We're going to talk about this tonight. And these guys are two of the best to talk about it. Greg and Trey, where would you start in a discussion about building band culture? Trey, what would you say first? What comes to mind first?
Well, I know where I am. Our culture is we try to create the most of a 6 through 12 culture, at least in the band world. My middle school band director and I are best friends. We do everything together. I go to the middle school every day. He comes to the high school, not during class. His schedule doesn't allow him to come during our class, but he comes to every Friday night football game, every band camp, after school rehearsals, parades, just about everything. So we really try to treat it as a 6 through 12 program and not as a middle school band, and then you come to the high school. It's more of this is the band program. Theirs is Fieldale Collinsville Middle School, and of course I'm at Bassett High School. But it's just our band program. It's not you do this for 3 years and then you come to us. It's more of a family atmosphere all the way through those 7 years.
Yeah, I would think that. So I've had an opportunity to know Trey now for Trey. Is this year 24 for you or 23? What year are you in over there at Bassett?
24 at Bassett.
24. And so
Yeah.
I've had an opportunity to watch. I remember when you first got your job there, and I've had an opportunity to watch it. And what I would say about culture, just in general, is just to remember that it really has to do with the people of the organization. And so when I think of that, I think of your band program. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask some questions, Tim, since I've been to Trey's program when it first started, and I know what it would look like and what he inherited and got to watch him work through some things over the years. And now when I go and I see his band program, it's a very distinctly different program, and the culture is one that I think is reflective of him, but also more importantly, the community that he lives in and the young people that walk through his doors. So it's not to say it's going to be the same every year, because I think he reacts to the personalities that come through the door, but I think it's a very important aspect. So Trey, can you talk a little bit about how you established the culture that you have, because it's a very positive one. When you go and you're around Trey and his kids, you can just tell that there's it's a cohesive unit, that there's an affinity for each other between him and the staff and the staff and the kids, and what it is you all are trying to do together. So talk a little bit about how you've built that.
Well, it's something that, we always kind of joke about younger band directors, which all of us were at some point in time. We're all old now. But we always say, you don't know what you don't know when you're early on. You start teaching and you just had to figure it out. And I think one of the things that we try to make as positive as possible is that I've learned over the years as a band director is it's almost more important that the kids understand that you want them to understand life, and then band comes after that. Like taking care of people, asking them, are you feeling okay today? I saw you, you're upset, or I heard that your grandmother's sick, or teaching them about, if you do this in real life, you're going to get a great job. If you do this in real life, you may lose your job. And we really have tried to take the life approach first, band approach second, but all still the while on being accountable, being dedicated, learning to communicate, and all those important things, while being positive. We have a staff meeting every week, and one of the things that we talk about first is, what are we doing this week, and where are the kids' heads? Like, what are we going to have to do this week for the kids to understand that we need to bust it, but that they still have a good time inside of it. And also looking for the places, like one of the things that Bobby Lambert, who's at Wando in South Carolina, always says around me is that Bassett does band camp better than anybody in the country. He always says that and laughs, because we've learned to go to what tends to be the most miserable times of band, which can be the 9 to 9 days of band camp, and have figured out a system of where the kids are actually having a great time. So those are the things we look for. As Scott, my middle school band director, Scott Allred, and I talk about all the time, and he says we have to eliminate all negative band experiences. Anytime we see one coming, we have to figure out how to get rid of it before it gets here. And if it gets here and we don't see it coming, how do we flip it to a positive band experience? We try to stay as far as possible away from quote unquote negative band experiences. So that's that we talk about those again before we even talk about what are we fixing this week, what's not working, what guard work are we adding this week. A lot of our stuff is, okay, we got this week. I have noticed, a couple weeks ago I said, hey guys, it's sick week. Like we've gone 3 weeks in a row of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, a game on Friday, and either a practice on Saturday or a contest on Saturday. So there's going to be some kids that are sick. There's going to be some kids who have a bad ankle. Like, we can either yell at them or we can understand and pick them up and move on. And those are the things that we talk a lot about with the kids and with the staff members.
Yeah. So you see them as people. And so,
absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think that and that's evident when you visit your program, and when you think about what theory says about how you have an organization that is generative or has a synergy for whatever it is that you're trying to do, or excellence in this case, in trying to always move forward, that it's about those connections that you make with the people involved in the organization. So talk about what are some of the things that, well, I'm just going to say one for myself. I'll ask it. Tell me, how many of your students in your school, what's the free and reduced lunch rate for your school?
In our school system, actually, is 100% free lunch, free breakfast, and dinner is served every day. So literally, when the kids come in every school, we have 2 high schools, 2 middle schools, and I think it's 9 elementary schools, 9 or 10 elementary schools. But literally, the kids come in, go straight to the cafeteria, free breakfast. Then they all, for lunch, we always kind of joke. The line moves pretty quick because it's pretty much just walk through. There's really no counting out money and this kind of stuff. It's all free. And then actually, for dinner, they have at 3:30 when the bell rings, there's dinner for people that want to take it home. All the athletes, band members can go to the cafeteria and eat before after school rehearsal if they want to. Even in the summer, there's a free program. Like when we have band camp, they feed us even during the summertime for that. Yeah.
So making connections with the kids, because you mentioned earlier about teaching them about that, using band as a tool to teach them about life and for the lessons that we all know are, and if you're a band director, we've all experienced and know what those lessons are that are inherent that you can learn from young people. And I think that connection aspect that you try to make with the kids, you were mentioning earlier that when we first started, that if their grandmother's sick, about it and you talk to them about their grandmother, or you know about things that are going on in their life so that you can check in with them. So,
right. We had one a couple weeks ago, and I won't say what instrument, but I don't want to give it away if anybody watches this. Nobody will from here. But anyway, a little freshman girl, and she's a pretty good little player. She's a really good marcher as a freshman. She's taken dance for several years, but it always seemed like there was something. And we just kind of brought her in and said, sweetie, like, you could be great. But, we tried to talk on the kids' terms. We're like, baby doll, you're just extra. Like, there's always something in your orbit. Your ankle's hurt. Your instrument is broken. Something happened here. Something happened there. You got in an argument with this girl during lunch or whatever. Like, sweetie, like, I love you. I really do. And I want you to be successful. But you got to figure this out, or this is not going to work for you. But your life is going to turn into being extra, and that's just the word the kids use. I mean, that's not one of our adult terms that we use.
Yes.
But and it wasn't about you're not playing your instrument well enough. It's you're not going to be able to, if you don't learn quickly, to just settle it. And the last thing that Scott and I both told her is, you are good enough. Golly, you're good enough, sweetheart. Like, you could be fantastic. You're holding yourself back. And so the daddy came in to talk to me the next day, and he was not mad at all. He was very supportive, but she had gone home and they had talked whatever. And basically it came down to that she had lost a couple family members over the summer. And we had talked about that a little bit, and I encouraged him. I said, she needs to talk to somebody. Like, I can tell, that she needs to talk to somebody. And so they went home and talked. And so she came back and talked to me the next day, and they set up some time with a person, a professional. She didn't want to talk to mom and dad.
Right.
And dad called and said, hey, could she miss a little bit of practice on Tuesday? I was like, she can miss all practice on Tuesday. Like, if she can get this figured out and make herself better, it's going to make her better for the rest of not just her band career, but just her life in general.
Right.
And those are the things that we look for.
There is so obviously she had what in educational terms people call trauma that she was dealing with, and there's a very interesting book that when you bring it up by a gentleman named Dr. Adolph Brown, and he actually, it's called Two Backpacks, and what the premise is that he says every kid has two backpacks. Like, they come to school and you see the backpack that they have on. And he said, what we quite often don't know is that when you open that backpack, it's not just books and stuff in there. There's another backpack inside that's carrying whatever it is that is going on in their life. In this case, this poor young lady had lost a couple of family members. Quite honestly, the fact that some kids in your school district, not some kids, obviously the vast majority of them are on free and reduced lunch and don't have the means to be able to make sure that they're going to have a steady meal at home. Your school district sees a need to send students home with dinner because they can. So that in itself is enough for you to have to be able to think about that concept, and to be able to think about, well, we know that we have to be able to take care of more than just playing the right notes and hitting the right dots or playing the right musical phrase. And so it's really great that you all care so much about the whole student and really try to educate the whole student. And for me, I think that when you talk about culture, that's the first number one part of what we're doing. You back in 1999, the first time I ever heard the phrase, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, was at Midwest. And Richard Crane was given a talk. And I think you and I went in and sat down, and I wrote that on a note card and I stuck it up on my desk, and it changed the way I taught.
Absolutely.
Because up till then, I thought it was all about just playing right notes and getting them to do it faster or better or in tune. And what I realized is I got to teach the kids. I got to teach them about more than just write notes and playing in tune, that there's a lot more that you can do. And truthfully, my band got better because I started really thinking about the connections that we were making and the fact that they were people and not just widgets sitting in a chair playing an instrument.
Well, I think some of that too is the more you show that heart to the kids, the more they go home and talk about it, and the more the parents trust you. And I know a lot of people talk about, oh, parents are emailing me every day and they're on my back and all this stuff. And how do you deal with it? And I say at Bassett, I don't a whole lot. Like, I don't go through a ton of parent emails of this person is mad and this happened and whatever, because they get to the point where they trust that we are doing what is in the best well-being of their student for life, not for marching band or concert band. And they start learning really quick. And I think when they're younger, when their kid is younger, when it's a freshman parent, it takes a little bit and they go, oh, well, they just, they want band to be my child's life. No, I do not want, band. Like, if you tell us you're going to be here and you agree to the calendar, then that is the commitment that we expect. However, we do not expect band to be your life. There are other things that are way more important. We say this all the time, especially at Bassett. Typically, we'll have 110, 115 in the marching band, and I'm well aware that probably one, maybe two of those kids want to be band directors, and the other 108 want to be a doctor, a contractor, a nurse, work at a bank, own their own business or whatever. Like, we are very aware that we are making adults, not band directors. And I think sometimes people get completely caught up into, the flat 5 chord and the diminished this, and all that stuff's important. But, like, does a kid know how to act when they get out of school? Do they know what's going to be expected of them as an adult or as a college student, and those type of things? So we really try daily. At band camp, I always start off, and this year I did it too, and just say, my number one goal for this week is your safety. It's not the march. It's not marching. It is not the opener. It is not the music. It is not your friendship. The number one goal is safety. We tell them that every day, especially if it's hot.
Yeah.
And even a couple of weeks ago, it may have been a week or two ago, and we were trying to finish the closer or something, and it was 98 degrees outside. And we went in, talked, and we rehearsed on pavement. And I said, hey, we're going to do this. And I said, we're not going to go out till later. And why is that? And one of the kids said, because you're more concerned about our safety. Absolutely. Nobody wants to stand that. So they understand that from day one, that we're not there to beat them up so that we can go out and win band contests.
Yeah, well, and I think that's what builds up the credibility, to your point earlier about builds up your credibility with parents, because part of the reason is because it's a 6 through 12 program, as you said. The kids know you from middle school with Mr. Allred, and the parents have opportunities to see you, and they know that you have the kids' best interest at heart. So you have a chance to build up credibility with them, and that's really important. And one of the reasons why, when maybe Johnny or Susie comes home with a story about what Mr. Harris this or Mr. Harris this today, and the parents go, well, why do you think Mr. Harris? There's a conversation with the student about why do you think Mr. Harris did that? And, more importantly, the kids realize that you're making decisions
Correct.
that are in their best interest and really about their well-being over any kind of accolades that you might be working toward with the students for the program that you're doing. So that gets you, what, as Mr. Perry Elliott would say, that puts a lot of money in the bank for when you need to make a withdrawal someday, right?
That's correct.
Trey, so you mentioned that you have a 6 through 12. So for a lot of us, so I didn't have 6 through 12. Well, I did while I was at Halls. I mean, I knew matter of fact, I taught the kids in 6th grade in Halls along with the other directors. But but at Newsome and in one of my other band programs, we didn't have 6 through 12. So I would have to spend a lot of time during 8th grade trying to go down and meet the 8th graders, and then of course have some meetings with the parents in the spring to try to establish relationships and to go ahead and start trying to put some money in the bank so that I could have that, build up that credibility that you're just talking about, and that level of trust that it takes in order to be able to lead a program and have folks not be concerned that you're not making a decision that's in the best interest of their kids. How much of that do you still do? I mean, is there anything you do with kids specifically in 8th grade?
Well, it's different this year. I've seen the 8th grade every year. The way the schedule works at the middle school, he would have 2 blocks of 8th grade in the morning when I go over there. This year they've switched the itinerates, and now he sees 7th grade. So I don't get to see them as much. I'm going to try to go over some later on. But some of the stuff that we try to do is, I go to all of his concerts. He comes to all of mine. Typically, I will begin his concert. I will go out and say, "Good evening. Glad you're here tonight," or "Welcome," or blah, 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 and go through the, if you please turn off your cell phone and, these things, and talk about, sometimes we'll even read off the NAFME, the 10 concert etiquette things, and how hard the kids have worked. And my name is Trey Harris. I'm the band director at Bassett High School. Blah, blah, blah. And they'll say, without further ado, you please welcome to the stage Mr. Scott Allred and the 6th grade fiddle console bands. And then he'll do the same thing for me at the high school. I'll stay behind the curtain, and he'll come out and he'll do the announcement, do all those things. They obviously all know who he is. But again, they kind of see us as a team. And even if they don't get to meet me or whatever, they all go, "Oh, that's the high school guy right there. Yeah. And he's here at the concert."
So let me shift the conversation a little bit, because I want to talk about, I just was sitting here thinking about, when I first became a band director, because I mentioned before the thing from Richard Crane, that the first time I heard the thing from Sir Giovanni, I just remember, and I think you and I probably talked about this 20 some odd years ago. Used to stand on the sideline at a band contest, and you'd see a band, see Lassiter come out, or when David Starnes was at Kennesaw Mountain, of course, we were both much younger then, Kennesaw would come out, or Lafayette. Like, you just see somebody come out who was really big, and they would be really great. But, my kids might go out and perform and have some kids out of step, and then I'd look out there and they'd have kids out of step, and but you watch the band and they're so great, and you think to yourself, how in the heck is he getting them to do that, right? And you think, well, all right, I'm gonna go watch so and so rehearse, and you go over and you watch them rehearse, and you go, okay, well, he's not really doing anything that I'm not doing. So, and then what you figure out as you get older is it's the culture pieces. It's the routines that they have set up, the procedures. And for me, what I'm really trying to drive at is the fact that they involve the kids in some of the decision making and put them in charge of some aspects of that in order to get ownership from the young people around what you're doing.
Right. And back to what you were saying about concerts a minute ago, that ties right back into it. We do try to get a lot of kids with kids. And one of the things that we do is we have a group of kids every time that Scott has a middle school concert. A group of our kids go, and they all sit and watch. And, we talk about after the concert, and they'll come up on stage, and they'll, if they're a trombone player, they'll go see the trombone players, go, hey, my name's Trey, and I play trombone at the high school, and you guys were awesome. I was like, whether they were awesome or not, it doesn't matter. All they care is that a high school kid came up and told me I was awesome. And right. Then we always have a crew of about 8 to 10 kids, and they come to every middle school concert, and they clean off the stage for Mr. Allred. Like, when the concert's over, they get every chair, every stand. He doesn't touch anything. but the kids they get to talk to all the kids and mill around and tell them how great the flute sounded. And that was my favorite song ever that you played. And, I'm so glad I came tonight, and we can't wait to see you next year or in a couple of years. And you're a superstar. I tell them all the time, just tell them they're a superstar. They don't know that you couldn't hear them play by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them, golly, I saw you playing, and you must be great. Mr. Allred must love you because just the way you sat in that chair, I can tell you really love band.
Right.
And they see people cleaning the stage and moving the percussion back. But the other piece of that is the parents also see that too. The parents of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade people, they see that and they go, "Oh wow, like that might be my kid one day coming over here to help." And that, those are the type of things you're talking about, the decision making. We have a pretty large leadership program that we do every year, and allowing them to make decisions about the band program. And we do a lot of stuff, and we have a meeting every week. I know a lot of band directors do that with their leadership team. And, like a couple of weeks ago, this is something very elementary, but again, Halloween falls on Thursday this year, and we're off on Friday. I think the football team has an open date, and we have state championships the next day. So I just went in a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey guys, Halloween's always kind of tricky, and all of you have younger brothers and sisters, and it's like, so I'm open if you guys would like to move the practice to Friday. We can take Halloween off. I think it'll make it easier on your families and everybody. But if you want to keep Thursday, that's great. It's totally up to you. I'll let you guys discuss for a minute, and then we'll decide." And they all were like, "Oh, let's take Thursday off and let's do Friday, because that way it'll be easier to load the truck for state, and we'll get that, and we get that Thursday off." And so just allowing them, to make decisions. We have a lot of different groups inside of the leadership team, and they have pretty free reign. They still have to come and say, "We would like to do this, we would like to do this," but we really challenge them to make the decisions for the betterment of the band. Another thing we do with kids is when Scott has, like getting ready for middle school all district and those things, he'll have Saturday practices. A lot of the high school kids will go and literally, and part of this is because they love Scott Allred. They love him. Is they'll go at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and stay from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock and sit with their trombone in the middle of 7th and 8th grade trombone players and play the middle school all district piece,
Nice.
Or take them and learn the scale or do this. But again, the coolness to a middle school student that a senior in high school was sitting here playing with me, they see that as I can't wait to get up there. And that's kind of what we try to create.
Well, what's really nice about that is so the kids are taking ownership over a couple of different things that I've heard through the stories, and that's what's important. So they're taking ownership over decisions that are being made around the program, so that when they're there on Friday night, it's a decision that they made. It's something, they got to be a part of the process instead of something just happening to them. And then when they go down to the middle school to play for half a day, they're building connections with those middle school students. But the other piece is that there's just a spirit there where they go and they're going to give back. So it's that servant leadership idea as well, where they're trying to pay things forward. And then what's really important about that is, and this is the thing that I think is great when you talk about the kids going to the concerts and rearranging the chairs and help clean up and picking up trash and doing whatever needs to be done, is that there's a culture for, we just do what's right, and we do things for each other. It's, this is your concert, but you could, we could just as easily sit in the audience and let you guys move your own chairs around, like, 9 out of 10 places in the country that you would go. But these young people come down of their own desire to come back down there and give back. And I don't want to pass over the fact that obviously it's something that's built into the culture of your program, but another important aspect of it is that they just like Mr. Allred. And so, and I'm
Absolutely.
sure that those were some of that, and I know that spirit of giving and being an invested member of the group, and, being good to one another, and, trying to serve the good, for the good of the entire group, are things that Scott expects. And so you guys are building that, well, and you as well, but you guys are building that from the start through 6th grade. And, when you get a chance to hang around the Bassett students, it's evident that, that's just the way things are done.
Right. And we say all the time, it's just a bunch of good kids. I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, we try to help them, train them to be that way. This weekend we went to a regional, and we, in between, after prelims, we went to practice somewhere at a different high school, and their band was practicing, and so we were sitting in the stands watching for about 30 minutes, and one of my parents came up, and I was kind of standing close to the students, not in the middle of them, but she came up and said, "Hey, we're going to feed everybody in the cafeteria." I said, "Yes." And she said, "We need about 6 or 8 cases of water. They're under the bus. Could we get a couple?" And before she said a couple of boys, there were 8 boys standing next to me going, "Which bay are they under?" And the other band director, which is Perry Elliott, he said, "How's that happen?" I said, "That's just the type of kids they are. Like, they are super servant oriented. Like, they are, and they don't do it for show or for attention. That's just, and again, it's culture. They learned it from somebody last year who graduated, who learned it from this person a couple of years ago. It just, they all sort of kind of want to be the next Jake, the next McKinley, the next Jacob, the next Josh, the next Caitlin, the next, they all see who those people are, and they're all sitting there going, I hope I get to be that person. I'm going to be that person. When he graduates, I'm taking that over right there. And not in a bad takeover, but I'm going to be the guy that is always here ready to move the drum major podium, or ready to do this or do that. It's not always about, I'm going to be first chair trombone. It's more about, I'm going to be the guy that has the crew ready to go to Mr. Allred's concert, to put up the chairs and stands from the auditorium back to the band room.
Yeah.
So that is a really cool culture that has sunk in, and that people want to be a part of.
Well, and so when you speak of that, so it makes me think of Andre and I, when we were leaving, we got in the car on Sunday morning to drive to the airport, and we were talking about that day, the next day. So, we showed up for rehearsal, and we started rehearsing, and all the dads just went over, got the truck open, and started building props, and they'd come over and go, "Well, Mr. Harris, they go, yeah, that looks good." And they go, "Well, what do you think about this?" You go, "Hey, you go ahead. They had an idea of what the overall concept was, but you let them own the details of it. You didn't go over and micromanage them." And so the other beautiful part about that is Andre Levin, he said it was unbelievable. He's like, they just worked all day. And what was funny is what we saw at the beginning of the day looked completely from the setup of your field, and things weren't covered yet, and I was like, "Oh, look, you got some big wheels out here." That's what it looked like at the beginning of the day, and by the end of the day, everything looked like thread on a spool, and big buttons that were laying out on the field, in the pin cushions, and the dads, like I said, you gave them the overarching design and knew what they were going for, but their own sense of desire for it to look great kicked in.
Oh yeah.
And you got to rehearse the band.
Right, and that's a band daddy mama culture too.
Mm-hmm.
That they have set for a long time, is, they understand. We got our first group of it out there of what the props were, and then they come out and I go, "It's too short." And like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Well, just look at everything. We need some height. And they
Mm-hmm.
looked at me and go, we got it. Give us a couple of days. We know what we're going to do. All right. Yeah. Come back. We'll try it again. And next thing you know, I'm expecting, two large needles that are 12 feet tall, and they come back in with 10 needles and 6 more buttons. And now they've got this in here. And, it's like they're almost trying to outdo what we're thinking of.
Yeah. Well, they don't want you. They're like, oh, you need to. Okay, we'll take care. And it really was. It was amazing. I told Andre, I said, that was amazing. I said, because he didn't have to go over and micromanage what was going on with the props as part of the show. They knew. He gave them some overarching ideas, and then they just took it and owned it. And so I just, we talk all the time. So as you know, I work with the leaders in our school district, so principals and assistant principals, and we talk all the time about what makes a successful organization or a successful school. And we talk about making sure you're inclusive and bringing in all the stakeholders, community members, parents, teachers, students. And students are the most often overlooked stakeholder. A lot of people don't want to include. They don't think, well, what's a kindergartner going to share with me? Well, if you'll sit down and talk to a kindergartner, you can learn a lot from them. You might have to do some reading between the lines, but one of the things we talk about is that when you bring all those people to the table and you let them have a voice in what's going on in their education or what's going on in their students' education, the word that you see in a lot of textbooks is buy-in. I hate that word. I like the idea of ownership, and that's what I feel like listening to you give your kids and your parents is the opportunity to own a piece of it. That it's not Mr. Harris's band, it's our band.
Right.
Yep. And so I think that people underestimate, including all those people. Let's be honest, Trey. So including all of those folks and all those different voices can be really messy for you, and at some points make your job a little more challenging because you might have to spend more time explaining the why behind a decision, particularly when you're making a decision that's not the one the majority might like you to make.
Right.
But I think that in the long run, it's created. I came home from my time with you last January when I came up to do the all area band.
Yeah.
I know I told you a number of times just how nice your kids were, and respectful. I mean, they played well, but the bigger piece is just they're nice kids. And you can say that we just have nice kids. You just tell people that, but Trey, that's a reflection of you and Scott and the parents obviously as well, because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But your kids, you have a good enough. Your band program's quite good, and they could just as easily be jerks. We've all been around enough programs where the program does quite well. They've got a talented staff. They quite often, when they get off the bus, end up in first place, and if not first place, second place by just a little bit. And you wouldn't want to spend more than 5 minutes with those kids or that staff, or because it can be obnoxious. And so I think that you can't. I think that what you've done in terms of, and I think it's the big piece for me is that you let them have a voice, and you have an expectation about how everyone's going to treat each other, and then you model that.
Right. Well, we kind of jokingly, but it's true. We also call that the all red filter. I mean, starting with him in 6th grade, going 7th grade, 8th grade, the kids who want to do it their way, or the kids who aren't interested in working very hard or aren't super team players, a lot of times don't make it through the all red filter.
Well, they decide this ain't for me.
Right. Yeah. And it's not that he's a jerk. He is demanding, but they all look at him as this daddy figure almost.
Sure.
By the time they're out of 6th grade, but you either the kids, I would say almost every kid absolutely just loved Scott Allred, and he's really tough on them. I mean,
Yeah.
there are times I'm standing in the room that some kid plays really well, like plays a little solo or some little concert in the park or some kind of show off day or something, and the kid plays like lights out for an 8th grader, and I'm sitting back there going, "Dang on right, he's coming to the high school next year," and Scott will look at him with his computer in his lap like he's doing a score, putting a score in the grade book, and he'll go, "He's all right. I thought you played a little better. All right, who's next?" And I'm dying on the inside. I'm like trying to find candy in my pocket or something like to go behind him after it's over. But that's part of his MO. Like that's part of how he gets them to eat out of his hand, is that they love him so much that they want to please him. And even when they play really, really well sometimes, and he goes, "Hey, whatever," they'll go home and practice. Like they won't go home and get mad and give up. It makes them want to do even more. And that's a special gift for teachers. I don't have that as much as Scott does for sure. I mean,
but you know yourself, you and I have talked about this before, that kids don't want to be in the Bassett band. They want to be in Mr. Harris's band. They don't want to be in the Collinsville or Fielddale. They want to be in Mr. Allred's band. And so because he does have expectations for them, and they do understand that he cares about them. It's a lot like when you build a rapport with kids, then what you have is it's a little more like it's like a family, right? So, I mean, we both have daughters, and I love my daughter dearly, but if she does something that's not on the up and up, or something that I don't appreciate, we're going to have a conversation about it. Or if she does something she's not supposed to, there's probably going to be a consequence. But she understands it doesn't mean Dad doesn't love me. It just means that I made a bad choice. And so this is what the consequence is for that. And so, and we're able to move on from that, because she also understands it doesn't mean I think she's a terrible person. And, and I think that when you have someone like Scott or yourself or anyone who takes the time to build a connection and create a rapport with their students and hold them to certain expectations, and the kids understand that those expectations are designed to help them over the long haul, not a short-term fix, but something that's going to serve them well while they're in school. But more importantly, when they get out of school and go off into life, they're going to have things to lean on that are going to help them be successful. I think that you can look at a kid after they played a segment and go, you know what, I really that's pretty good, but I know I've heard you play better. So,
and he's great at that. And that's the other thing that one of the things that you're kind of hitting on now that we are notorious for, and sometimes it drives my staff crazy, but they've learned it about me, and now they have started to be the same way. And sometimes I get a little bit of a bad rap from the parents or the kids, but I just don't believe in giving up on a kid. And there are times that people are like, "When are you going to kick?" I'm just going to make up a name. When are you going to kick Ainsley out?
Yeah.
Like, when are you going to kick her out? And I go, I know her home life. I'm not. I'm like, there'll come a point where we may have to replace her with a shadow or something, but I'm not going to. Like, and 8 out of 10 times they become some of the best kids in the band.
Yeah.
My
all-time favorite story, and I tell this to some of our aspiring school leaders, is because sometimes you just are trying to get people on board with something, and there's always someone who likes to swim against the current. And there was a young man when I first got to Halls who so he shows up. He wasn't at the morning meeting, but so when he does show up, he comes out to the field and he skateboards out to the practice field with his trumpet in his hand. And so I'm trying to get the basics block set up, and he's out there bouncing his skateboard off the curb. And so I'm not going to say his name, but this was my first year at Halls. And so he spent all year doing stuff like that that kind of swam against the current while I was trying to establish procedures and this because I was new to the program, it needed some tweaking, and so I was trying to establish procedures and make sure that we could be the best that we could be. And he all year it was just like that all year, Trey. And then his next year, it wasn't quite as bad. Like I think I finally got him to leave the skateboard inside, but the next year he just always was. He had a lot of power. He was a leader in the group, whether I wanted him to be or not. And so, as you know, when we did band officers, the kids all did applications and drum majors did tryouts, but I always reserved the right to pick the 2 band captains myself. It was just going to be who Mr. Basham wanted. You could write a paper for it, but you didn't have to. And so going into his senior year, at the back part of his junior year, I picked him as one of the band captains. And every single band officer, I had an open door policy, as you know, like you do. Kids understood they could come in my office and shut the door, and we could talk about whatever. If they wanted to talk about a decision I made, I'd listen to them. And I might go, you know what, you got a good point. Let me think about that. Or here's the why behind the decision. And I might change my mind, or I might not. I might realize, I got to go talk to the whole band. Well, this one, Mr. Basham, I cannot believe you made so-and-so band captain. What were you thinking? I mean, he did it. And I looked at him and I said, guys, he's a leader in this group, whether we want him to be or not. And he's going to either use it for good or evil. And so I've picked him for band captain, and I'm going to try to get him to use it for good. And so I brought him into the office, and I just was straight with him. You've been swimming against the current for 2 years, but you're a leader in this group, and it's going to be your senior year next year, and we're going to either have a great year next year based on the choices you make, or we're not going to have a great year next year based on the choices that you make. Yep. And I don't want to take full credit. I talked him into going off to the BOA Summer Symposium, and he did the leadership camp, and he came home on fire, absolutely on fire. And one of the best years I ever had as a band director, because he took ownership over what we were going to do, and consequently got the other kids with him, and just really created a synergy for the band for that year. It was really fun to watch. So to your point, I think kids are kids, and the bottom line is I'm 48 years old and I still make bad choices, and I'd hate it if someone had kicked me out of band for some of the bad choices I made when I was a teenager. So. Oh,
absolutely. Same here. And that's one of the things I pride myself on, again, that sometimes is not popular, is when you find the kid who needs extra, whether it's attention or extra chances or whatever, typically they're crying out for something.
Yep.
And trying to figure out what that is without just going, hey, you missed rehearsal, you're gone. I mean, we have a strict rehearsal policy and all that stuff like everybody else. But trying to figure out the why, like, why is this going on?
Yeah.
How can we change this kid's culture? Because again, once you change their culture, I mean, little girl I was telling you about already just a while back about needing to talk to somebody, she lost a grandmother suddenly in the summer. Last 3 weeks has been a totally different kid. And I just think it's because, yes, she talked to somebody, but more importantly, me and Scott sat her down and said, sweetie, you are good enough. For some reason, you think you're not. And so you have to be hurt, or your instrument's messed up, or you start drama at dinner, or you do this or whatever. Stop it. You are fantastic. Maybe nobody's ever told you that you're good enough. You are good enough.
Well, the bottom line is,
and just be who you are.
Well, the bottom line is y'all showed her that you cared. I mean, that's right. That's the bottom line. So
right. I think that's the most important on the culture side.
Hey Trey, this is Tim. I'm here in the background.
I want to ask
you a couple questions. My webcam's not coming up for some reason, so I'm just going to ask you as a voice.
Okay. We can see you perfectly.
Can you really see me?
Yeah,
I can.
I can.
See Greg.
I see you.
Okay. Well, I'm not showing up on my screen, so I didn't know if you were seeing me or not. So
Okay.
I guess you've been seeing me look dumbfounded for the last 2 minutes. But anyway, um, you mentioned in passing a couple things. This conversation has been fantastic, by the way. It's been what I expected, but it's been probably even better. The idea of growing the students as into people, and that's really a fascinating way to look at this, and I think a really helpful conversation. You mentioned in passing that you have some groups within your leadership team. What did that
Yes.
mean? Like, what kind of groups are you talking about?
Well, we have people who are in charge of different things. So we have a prop crew, we have a pit crew, we have a unicorn crew, which is a crew who is in charge of doing special things for the younger kids.
Wait a minute, did you say unicorn crew?
That is correct, because unicorns are mythical. You're not supposed to know that they are real. So people do things for.
That's it right there. We just found out what the magic ingredient is right there.
Yeah. It is a crew that no one is supposed to know is a crew. Basically, like their job is to make the younger people feel special, but it's just a thing that the band does. Most of them are standing out at the road every day at band camp. They're there with signs and yelling and screaming, and third day of band camp, blah blah blah, this and that, yelling and screaming, almost like a pep rally for 10 days of band camp. They're out there every day when I get to school. The last 10 years have never driven into band camp when the kids weren't already there. And I told them, not only is that impressive to the kids, to the parents driving their kids in the road, like they're like, okay, my kid's going to be taken care of. If these kids are here and they're like this is really cool. We have, of course, like a secretary. We have who writes thank you notes for people who donate things, or whatever we need, people who buy ads, this kind of stuff. We have what else do we have? I'm going to draw a blank. There's a social committee that makes decisions on if we're going to do that. Like one of the things they did is at our first Friday night football game, first performance of the year, on Thursday after practice, they waited for everybody to leave, and then they decorated the band room and had show day. So when all the kids came in to school the next day, there was decorations everywhere, and so it makes the younger people walk in and go, tag on, this is a big deal. Like this band room is like decorated like the prom. There are those type of crews. There's a speaker crew that when we go down for rehearsals, they set up the Dr. Beat in the back and the one that I use up front. So literally the staff, we just walk into rehearsal and everything is set up. So there are several crews along those lines, if that makes sense, Tim.
No, that does. That explains it. I just sort of wondered what some of those different groupings were, and you explained, and it's all very smart. And I know you do a lot of leadership training and development with your students, which is clearly part of this whole thing we've been talking about. The other thing you mentioned, you sort of said it in passing just now, you said that your kids have a great time at band camp. Well, that's probably a whole another hour-long conversation, but can you give me a couple ideas briefly of what you're talking about that makes that a fun time?
Yeah, we put them into teams and we call it Band Camp Olympics. And we do it by it's not by the clarinets against the trumpets against the saxophones. It is truly, I jumble all the people up and I get personalities, older personalities with younger personalities. And I already kind of know the kids. We put them in about 8 teams. We give them a color, and they come up with their own name. They come up with a call every time that your team wins points. And points can be on games we play. It can be at ensemble where I go, Greg Basham, you look fantastic. 10 points for you. And somebody goes, whatever their we call them cat calls, but whatever, there's always a caller in the group and they say something really quick and then they have some little yell that they do that lasts for like 2 seconds. And at the end of rehearsal, there's there's marchers of the day, there's players of the day, there's section of the day. And so they add up their points every day and we keep track of the points. And You know, that if they're the next morning, if everybody's there and on time, it's 50 points, and if one person's late, it's only 40 points. And so there's people in the band room like or outside minutes shooing people in to be on time because they don't want to lose points. You know, and we make the joke at the end. I mean, we tell them every day, kind of for a while, we'll not tell them who's in first place, but we'll tell them a little bit as we go. And then at the end, when we do our parent performance, we announce we have this trophy, and they take their picture around the trophy, and you know this just stays in the band room, and they realize that they get absolutely nothing. But I mean, these kids like get T-shirts made. Like if they're on the red team and they're the Red Hot Tamales, like they'll come in after about the 5th or 6th day of band camp with matching T-shirts on with the Red Hot Tamales, and you know it's
so what I hear is team building.
It is team building.
And you get them to know each other by mixing them up.
That's correct. That's correct.
And then I want to point out that the other common thing through all of this is he just expects them to be good people.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's the bottom line of all of this. And you're doing a lot of things to help them learn how to be or start to be good people. I think that's probably the most impressive takeaway to me of the whole thing. I guess I kind of thought this discussion might be about, well, this is how we work on putting our instruments away or whatever. But like, that's not at all what you're focusing on. And the excellence comes with this other stuff you're discussing, right?
Because they're a cohesive unit.
Yes. Well, it's like, like you're talking about how to put stuff away and things like that. You're asking about crews. We have a cleanup crew. And every day they're the last people to leave the band room. Like there are 4 people that go around the band room, go to every room we've been in, whether it be band camp or whether it's a Thursday practice. And when they're done, they go to Kennedy. She's the crew foreman, and Kennedy either can go check behind them or trust that they've done everything they're supposed to do. So again, the culture, when you come in the band room in the morning, it's spotless, but it's because. So, we tell the kids all the time, if the room is clean, less people are likely to mess it up. It's like when you go in a messy room, you can throw a coat over here, you can throw a sock over here, throw your book over on the bed, it doesn't matter. But when you walk in and everything is just right, it makes you think a little bit more about, well, I can't sit this right here. They'll know this is my book bag. They'll know that this is what. So there's, those type of crews that go along with all that kind of stuff too.
Well, we need to finish up this conversation, so I'm going to let each of you have a final thought about anything. Greg, I'll let you go first, I guess. Any final wrap-ups that you want to say? Just a quick thought before we go.
Well, I think, I mentioned the Sergio Giovanni quote when we first started this that, I had never been exposed to until I heard that talk by Richard Crane. And then the other thing that I want to lean on that I've always tried that I think is important and tried to teach kids and try to do myself is leave everything better than you found it. And I got that from John Fulton, who was my band director my freshman year in high school. And then the last thing is something that I saw from Colin Powell the other day. And it was a quote that I saw from Colin Powell. And very simply, the first statement is leadership is about people. And regardless, you teach music, but when you're a band director, you're a leader and you're trying to grow other leaders. And people need to be mindful of the fact that it really is about the people and the human interaction. And that's going to be messy. You can create procedures and policies. And in Trey's case, he's created a lot of systems that work together to create this creative culture and unit for him that if you have a chance to go and visit his band program and be around, just be there for a couple of days, you can see that he makes it look easy because he's been doing it for a while. It's like anything that anybody does well. If you go watch Michael Jordan shoot a jump shot, you go, what's he doing that's different than everybody else? But going to Trey's band program, you go, well, this looks easy. What's he doing that I'm not doing? You're gonna have to hang around for a little while so that you can see behind the curtain. But just keep in mind that it is about people, and it's going to be messy sometimes, but just make sure you care for them and let the relationship be the center of what you're doing.
Great. Trey, final thoughts?
I was going to just tag on to what Greg said. It's funny that he's talking about this going to be messy sometimes, and you know, we preach family, 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 and take care of each other. And sometimes a parent will come in and say, well, you know, my son feels like he's being picked on, and you know, blah blah blah, and they had this argument, and I thought you said this was all about family. And I will say, have you and your husband ever fought in front of your child before? Well, yeah. Okay, well, that's what families do. Like, we don't always agree. Like, part of being a family is figuring out it's not about figuring out who's right and who's wrong, but figuring out how to do this together and compromise sometimes. And I think my ending thing, I'm not close to my doctorate like Greg is, so I don't have as many philosophical things to say, with Dr. Basham coming up here. But it's just, for those of you that are younger band directors that are looking on, is get more interested in the kids' lives than you are in your band. And I think you will be happy with where you end up.
Awesome. Well, guys, what a great conversation. This was really, really good information. I'm really happy we got to share this. Greg and Trey, you're both wonderful. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time tonight.
Listen, if you want to have us back to talk about how we make an arc and how to line up the horns and stuff like that, we can do that sometime too.
Yeah, well, I know that's all part of it too, but no, this was really, really interesting. And Trey, you know, your kids are really lucky to have you building this and teaching them the way you are. So thank you for the good work you're doing.
I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
All right.